This is the theme of Setback and Misery. Paul's hastiness to leave misery. Select frames. And so him trying to get out of the bed, this is a physical and a visual of him trying to get out of the bed and using his fractured legs, and the only strength that he has is in his upper body, and that's really only one side of his body because the arm is still not physically recovered, so he only has that one arm. And so to me, this is no different than someone trying to get out of something that they don't want to do anymore as well. That this is a visual representation of him trying to get out of the misery business and feeling fractured and feeling helpless and feeling like if he doesn't get out, he's going to die. Right? Because remember, he talks about his tomb. So I hope I can write something worthy of putting on my tombstone. Right? And tombstone means death. And so if he doesn't get out of the misery business, if he doesn't get out of it, make a decision to get out of it, he could die. So when she says, if I die, you die. If my misery dies, your misery dies, right? But his misery is completely different from her misery, even though they are both miserable. So he manages to get out of the bed and pain, right? Because he sort of flops down on the floor, which causes even more pain for him. And letting go of something causes pain. This film analysis is part of my Overcoming Setback series, and I have done multiple audio types of lessons on different topics. But when you are coming out of a setback, when you're trying to overcome setback, it's painful to let it go. The same way that you see him lying on this floor in pain, because of the shock of having to separate yourself from something, that thing that you were holding on to, you were surviving in your setback. It's hard to think of, or it's hard to consider a vision of overcoming setback. I mean, if you look at the person on the track field trying to run, and then all of a sudden they catch a Charlie horse or something like that, and they have to hobble, and it's hard to walk, and they stumble and they're on the ground, and sometimes somebody will come back and help them or something like that. But if you stay there, even though you may be a few feet away from the finish line, that reflects surviving the setback. But if you crawl your way past that finish line, not just get to the finish line, but you actually pass it, like you cross it, then that is overcoming setback. And so the setback series that I have, the Overcoming Setback series, you can look at this from a literal standpoint, from a figurative standpoint, but you definitely have a good visual of when you are trying to get out of something, let go of something, move past something, that there's pain that comes with it. It's punishment, and then there's pain. And then there's going to be some correction, and then after that, recovery, restoration, and advancing. And those are essentially part of the 7 stages of setback. And so the pain is so hard, right? Because, he really would have felt this type of pain had he not had to go this route of Annie and being, trapped in her house. And he made it through the snow, and he got back to his home city, and then he decided to kill off Misery Chastain in that book that she has. He would have felt the economic strain of that. This face that you see here would have come on his face even later, because if you decide to move past something with such abruptness, right, with no indication to any of your fan base that you're going to let her go, because Annie is really surprised. She's actually surprised that he's killing off Misery Chastain. Even the agent at the beginning of the movie is surprised that he's killing off Misery Chastain. So he's not writing with any kind of care for his fan base. Because then if he was writing with care about his fan base, he would have sent out some kind of memo, in a sense, publication or some sort of newspaper article that he's ending the series. And then by the time he might have crossed paths with Annie, she wouldn't have been so shocked, or she would have had so much time to get used to the idea. But this face that you see here is a literal representation of the physical pain that he's in. But it is also a foreshadowing, or it could have been a foreshadowing, or well, maybe looking backwards, that had he not had his car not gone off the road and he returned home and he let go of Misery Chastain, he might have had a whole revolt from his customer base, his fan base, and he, along with the publisher, would have felt the financial aspects of it. So there's still the pain. We can look at his legs and tell that they are still in pain. There's a lot of swelling at his feet as well, blue, black and blue. And then this is his attempt to crawl. He's trying to escape, and he's going to try to crawl, and he's trying to do it despite the fact that his body really won't let him do it. How is it that you can barely walk on your feet, but you're going to crawl to the door and open the door and hope to walk out of it, right? It doesn't make any sense. So then how do you think you're going to crawl out of something that has been working for you for so long and expect to walk immediately, right? He's expecting, while crawling on this floor, that he's just gonna miraculously get up and walk on these fractured legs, right? Well, in the same way, if we look at the implications of his career change, he's expecting that he's going to crawl out of his current system that is working for him financially, economically, and then expect to just immediately walk well. That he thinks that writing another type of series, or the beginning of another type of series, is going to immediately translate. Well, I got a customer base. Yeah, but your customer base loves the Misery series. They don't know this new book that you're trying to do, or this new thing that you're trying to do, right? I mean, maybe if you would turn your books into films or something like that to kind of keep Misery alive for your fan base, right? Then that might be actually a better way to transition. I think if J.K. Rowling had just immediately stopped the Harry Potter series, but didn't give the fan base something else to think about, like not only the theme park, but the book was turned into films, a whole series of films. Well, that gave the customer base some time to work through this idea that all things come to an end eventually. But she had written so many books, and those books had turned into films, that they were able to still make the transition. So then when she finally ended the series, and I feel like she could come back around today and create a whole new Harry Potter book and still get her fan base back immediately. But that's beside the point. That by the time she decided to end on a particular series, particular book, it wasn't so much of a shock to the system. They had already been looking forward to that, or there was this expectation. And she had basically said in interviews anyway that she would be ending the series at this particular book. I don't read the Harry Potter books or the series as a whole, nor did I nor do I watch the movies. But I do look at the business aspect of the series. You know, I sort of research and I listen um, to reviews and interviews and things like that. And so Paul Sheldon making a decision to exit so abruptly without informing his fan base or without coming up maybe with a movie ideal or something like that is it is kind of offensive. Just because you want out, and you have every right, every, privilege or prerogative to say, I want out. But you can't then expect your customer base to come to the next place that you are wanting to take them, because you're not showing them respect. And he is upset because in some ways he's not showing his customer base respect. And so trying to crawl out of the bed and to the door to get out is no different than him trying to crawl out of that misery writing business to get to the door to get out. But it's with a lot of strain. He's still fractured in areas of his body and as well as his mind, because he's fractured in his understanding in the same way that Annie is fractured in her understanding, because he doesn't understand the misery of people and how his books have helped to bring happiness to the misery of people, strange enough as that sounds. And so there's a lot that you can say going on here. So we see the door, right? Remember, we got an image of the door. So now we see the full door, and how there's a keyhole and then there's the knob, of course. And, is honestly, you can look at or visualize a person holding their hand out. I thought that would have been an interesting camera angle, him holding his hand out to try to get to the door, sort of reaching for it, right? But he doesn't wait until he doesn't hold his hand out until he actually gets to the door. And so now he's trying to pull himself enough to get to this door with much strain. And again, it is symbolic. It is symbolic of him trying to get out of his profession or get out of the misery writing business, to get out of the setback. That decision to begin writing the misery series when he didn't feel like it was something worthy of him to write, and that he didn't want it to become his life. I believe he believed that from the beginning. So the fact that he made a decision to write it and pursue publication of it, that actually created his setback. Because if he wanted to be a serious writer, then he should have had the patience to be a serious writer. And so we have his hand extended in the scene, him trying to open the door. And usually when you're trying to open the door, you're not just turning the knob to turn the knob. You're trying to turn the knob out of some place of hope, that whatever's on the other side of the door is going to be of some kind of help to you. Otherwise, you wouldn't pull at the door to try to open it. We don't open doors just to open a door to a lion or an alligator or some danger, right? We open the door because we are hoping that on the other side of the door that there is purpose, that there is life, that there is peace, not a lot of chaos. Because otherwise, if we open it and it's a lot of chaos, we do better just to keep the door closed. And that's what isolation, and that's what I feel like Annie is really going through, that she's so isolated on this farm and she doesn't really open the door other than to go to the store and come on back. That is something in her past, in her life, that has basically informed her it's too much chaos on the outside, so I'm just going to stay on the inside. And wanting and keeping Paul trapped maybe reflect her loneliness or her feeling of loneliness, and that finally there's somebody here that I can be friends with, I can have here, and I just create the writing studio for him here, and he can do everything he wants to do here, and he never has to go anywhere. In the same way, she has everything at her house. How is it that she has the drip thing to go into his arm, to the needle and everything to go into his arm, and medications and all that kind of stuff? How is it that she has all of that in her house, right? I believe it was for her for her husband. Regardless, though, it's maybe preparing for someone to come, right? So I don't know. It's kind of interesting. So he realizes he's not going to be able to get out so easily. He doesn't have the strength. So here it is. He wants to get out of the misery writing business, but he doesn't have the strength. He did have enough strength to write a whole new book. But it's interesting that he doesn't have a title for that book, and he doesn't have, and he really doesn't know what the book is about. That's interesting in and of itself. That he wants to get out of something, but there's no certainty, there's no surety on his part about the direction he wants to go, other than he wants to write serious work. That's really not enough of guidance to begin this new venture. He should title his own book. Now, once he turns it in for publication, he might get an editor who might say it might be a better title to do this or whatever. That's fine. But he's the one, he is the writer who gives his book purpose. And to untitle it and to not completely know what the book is about is a sign that he really wasn't as ready as he thought he was to get out of one thing and go into another. And so this image that you get of him is sort of reflected in the idea that he wasn't as ready as he thought he was to get out of one thing, to get out of that setback and overcome that setback and into something else that would bring him peace. He's not really even asking for money, but something that would actually bring him peace. He's not as sure as it seems like he wants us to believe that he is. So in essence, his setback in this regard is essentially not planning for where he wants to go. Writing the manuscript is a very big step, is a very first step. At least he's setting to task to do something. He got it in his mind to do more serious work, and he began thinking of an idea and outlining that idea before he began to write or whatever. And then he went to the cabin in the town, and he stayed there 6 weeks. So there's some kind of effort towards moving towards something, moving out of something and moving towards something. But the setback is in the idea that he's not as focused enough on overcoming his setback of writing the misery series to the point that he can't even title his own work. All right, like, subscribe, and visit. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell for more discussions. You can visit my YouTube channel for further film analysis. It's Favorites Film Analysis as the title of the channel. You can always send me an email and ask me a question, reginayfavorites@yahoo.com. My Overcoming Setback 5 Keys for Entering and Exiting Correction book will become available around October 2021. I'm still doing some editing. The book does not focus on film analyses, but I use the content that I created for the book to support my my perceptions of setback used as a theme in select films. So when the book becomes available, I will send out a notification video, audio. Thank you very much for visiting the channel.